For 5 years of marriage, my wife had an affair and even bore him twins. They conspired to fake their deaths, hoping I would raise their children for them. She even lied, claiming she couldn't conceive, only to then scheme with her lover to return and claim kinship once the children grew up. I froze her assets and then exposed their scandal. Her lover ended up in prison for theft, while she eventually ended up destitute. Mother Eleanor lay on the hospital bed, tears streaming down her face, clutching the 2 boys' hands, unwilling to let go. Ethan, how wonderful it would be if these 2 children were truly yours. Not having a grandchild all these years had always been Mother Eleanor's regret. She wiped away a tear and instructed, "It's fate. Tiffany is a good child, too. She has a medical condition, so you can't blame her for that. From now on, you 2 must live well together." Your mother can finally close her eyes in peace. Thinking that Mother Eleanor was beyond treatment, my heart was filled with nothing but grief. Unwilling to give up on Mother Eleanor, I left the 2 children in the hospital room, and went to the office to find the attending physician. To my surprise, I found the attending physician had locked the door from the inside, talking with a woman. "Your mother-in-law probably only has a few days left. Are you sure you want to go abroad with me?" "Yes, let's leave the day she dies. My husband will definitely be too distracted to notice anything else that day, and with the children keeping him distracted, he'll be even less aware of me." "All right, that day we'll stage our deaths together and settle abroad. Once the children grow up and inherit his estate, we'll return to claim kinship." I never expected to accidentally overhear such a shocking conversation, and the woman's voice sounded very similar to my wife's. Soon, heavy breathing emanated from within, followed by an indescribably intimate scene. I didn't knock or disturb them. Instead, I hid in the stairwell, waiting for them to finish. 20 minutes later, the door finally opened from the inside. Just as I was about to step out, my body stiffened, and I froze in place. The woman who walked out was Tiffany. I couldn't believe my eyes. It wasn't until I saw her walk into Mother Eleanor's hospital room that my last hope died. My wife had an affair and even gave birth to twin sons with another man. Yet, before we married, she told me she had infertility and could never have children in this lifetime. Still, I defied family pressure and married her wholeheartedly. In my heart, love can conquer all, but I never imagined her love for me was fake. No wonder she used to often suggest we adopt a child, saying she didn't want me to have any regrets in this life, but I always refused, not wanting her to feel sad every time she saw a child. Thinking of her medical condition, when Mother Eleanor's critical illness struck this time, she suggested adopting children again, and I immediately agreed. Then, the very next day, she brought those twins home, as if afraid I'd back out. Knowing her plan now, my heart felt like it was ripped open, the pain unbearable. 5 years of marriage, and it had come to this. In the hospital room, Tiffany was sitting by the hospital bed, holding Mother Eleanor's hand, offering words of comfort. The lust in her eyes hadn't completely faded, and she looked radiant. Seeing me enter, she said softly, "Honey, I told you long ago we should adopt a child, but you just wouldn't agree. Look how happy Mother Eleanor is now. If we had adopted sooner, she could have been happy for a few more years." I clenched my fists, nails digging deep into my skin. If we had adopted sooner, she would have long since faked her death, and gone abroad with her lover, living it up abroad, and I would have become an unwitting live-in nanny, working hard to raise 2 foster sons. Finally, after I gave all my family's assets to the foster sons, Tiffany would return with her lover to claim kinship. For 5 years of marriage, I always thought we were in love. Tiffany, in my eyes, was a kind and virtuous woman. I never expected her to cruelly plot against me like this. I stared intently at Tiffany until she unnaturally looked away. I said jokingly, "Tiffany, TV often shows those cheesy plots, where the wife can't have children, so they adopt one to raise. But years later, they find out the adopted child is actually the wife's and another man's. It wasn't that she couldn't have children, but that she didn't want to have them with her husband." The moment I finished speaking, Tiffany's face changed, and she lashed out furiously, "Ethan, what are you talking nonsense about? I kindly brought 2 children back just to make Mother Eleanor happy, and you actually suspect me." With that, she burst into tears, saying indignantly, "Mother, look at what he's saying. He suspects me like this. We might as well just get a divorce." Whenever we had arguments before, she loved to threaten me with divorce in front of Mother Eleanor. She knew Mother Eleanor's greatest fear was our divorce, so it always worked, and I would eventually give in to her. This time was the same as before. Mother Eleanor on the hospital bed quickly tried to smooth things over. Ethan, why are you talking nonsense? Tiffany is kind and virtuous. How could she do such a thing? Quickly apologized to Tiffany. Your mother doesn't have many days left to live, and her only wish is for you two to live well together. I forced a bitter smile, my eyes welled up with tears. In front of Mother Eleanor, I apologized to Tiffany, but this apology was different from past compromises. This one was for Mother Eleanor, and this was also the last time I would apologize to her. Only then did a smile break through her tears, a hint of triumph on her lips. Just then, the attending physician, Scott, entered the hospital room. Only then did I realize that, whenever Tiffany was present, he would come to check on the patients. I noticed his first glance upon entering was at Tiffany. Before, they had also been exchanging glances right under my nose, but I had never noticed. The two boys also looked at Scott. 4-year-olds clearly don't act as well as adults. They blurted out, "Dad." Tiffany gave two forced chuckles, unnaturally turning the two boys' heads towards me. "Silly children, your dad is right here. Don't get it wrong again." The two children quickly realized their mistake, and immediately called out Dad in their childish voices. I outwardly acknowledged them, but felt utterly disgusted. I secretly sent a message to my childhood sweetheart, Hannah, who had harbored a crush on me for years. "Are you still willing to marry me?" She replied instantly, "I am." Scott came in to examine Mother Eleanor, then called me out. "Your mother will likely pass away in the next few days. You should pay close attention and call me immediately if anything happens." I nodded. Before admitting Mother Eleanor to this hospital, I had already taken her to several other hospitals, all with the same diagnosis. Only then did I truly examine Scott. The features of those two boys really resembled his. He was made uncomfortable with my stare and touched his nose. "I heard you adopted two children to fulfill your mother's dying wish. Well, you must cherish these two children and treat them well. Don't disappoint Mother Eleanor's expectations." I gave a light chuckle. "Drive. Scott seems very fond of my two adopted sons. But it's no wonder you like them. They do resemble you quite a bit. Drive. Scott, what a coincidence." Scott's smile instantly froze, and he awkwardly made an excuse and quickly left. I stared at his hurried, retreating figure. A chill crept into my eyes. Returning to the hospital room, I saw Tiffany's eyes red and swollen, clearly having cried. Mother Eleanor also had red-rimmed eyes and called me over. "Ethan, come here." Kneel down. Though baffled, I still knelt before Mother Eleanor. With Tiffany's help, Mother Eleanor managed to sit up, and said in a grave tone, "Ethan, swear an oath in front of me. In this lifetime, you can only adopt these two children. You cannot wrong Tiffany, and certainly cannot have more children with another woman." After saying this, Mother Eleanor coughed violently. I quickly got up, wanting to help her lie back down, but she refused, her face stern, insisting I swear. I shot a glance at Tiffany, knowing without a doubt it was her idea. She was worried that after faking her death and fleeing abroad, I would treat these children poorly or even have more children with another woman. So, she tearfully complained to Mother Eleanor, and this time, Mother Eleanor forced me to kneel and swear. Tiffany avoided my eyes and subtly pulled the children into Mother Eleanor's arms. "Grandma, Grandma." Mother Eleanor tearfully shed tears, coughed heavily a couple of times, and shouted urgently, "Swear it." A knot of anger tightened in my chest, but I couldn't lash out in front of Mother Eleanor. I knelt and crawled to her side, held her frail, aged hands, and positioned myself between her and the two boys. "Mother, medical technology is so advanced now, perhaps Tiffany's condition will be cured one day, and we'll have our own children. Why force your son to make such a vow? Don't you know me better than that?" I cast a cold glance at Tiffany, sneering inwardly. I was too foolish, a poor judge of character. 3 days later, Mother Eleanor still left me. On that same day, Tiffany claimed she was going to a secluded spiritual retreat in the mountains to pray for Mother Eleanor's soul and never returned. After handling Mother Eleanor's funeral arrangements, I immediately froze the bank cards under my name and Tiffany's. Then I went to the police station to report a missing person, waiting for the time to pass to have her identity officially revoked. The night before, I had already discovered that the bank cards and gold bars in the safe were gone. But what Tiffany didn't know was that I had already swapped the gold bars for fakes days ago. The two children sat at home, staring at me expectantly. "Dad, we're hungry." I snorted coldly. "I am not your dad. Your mom and dad left you to live it up abroad, so you too will have to face some hardship. We sent them to the orphanage. Tiffany had never finalized their adoption papers anyway, so the orphanage quickly took them in. Hannah's and my wedding was put on the agenda, and we quickly began our family planning. A month later, Hannah discovered she was pregnant, and with twins. When Hannah gave birth smoothly to twin boys, I was so moved I burst into tears on the spot. That moment of becoming a father, my heart was so overjoyed. Years later, the two sons finally grew up and inherited the family business Hannah and I had built over half our lives. Just as Hannah and I were preparing to peacefully enjoy our retirement, an elderly couple found their way to the house. I closely examined them, only then recognizing Tiffany and Scott, who had faked their deaths years ago. Seeing their faces, clearly more aged than their peers, I let out a cold laugh. Tiffany's wrinkles crinkled up, and she snarled, "Ethan, don't think I don't know you deliberately froze my bank cards and swapped out the gold bars in the safe back then. You also told Scott's wife about our affair and conspired with her to invalidate both our identities in this country. We suffered so much abroad all these years, and it's all your fault. Do you know how many years we spent trying to get back? Today we're finally back, and your good days are over." Her voice trembled at the end, and a smug smile played on her lips. Even after many years, when I saw Tiffany again, the hatred surged back. "Tiffany, your suffering all these years is your karma. You know full well what you did back then." She snorted disdainfully, saying dismissively, "Since you already know, I won't beat around the bush. Where are my two sons? Bring them out." "Are you talking about the two foster sons you brought back that year? After you left, I sent them to the orphanage." The triumph in her eyes became even more evident. "Ethan, I know you're just saying that to annoy me. I hear they just inherited your family's business. I have to say, you raised those two boys remarkably well. But what you don't know is that those two children are actually Scott's and my biological sons. All these years, you've been raising our children for us, and now you've even given them all your family's assets." She exchanged a glance with Scott beside her, and they both chuckled. "We, as a couple, truly need to thank you. You've been a truly great foster father." Scott even extended his rough, weathered right hand, offering to shake mine. "Ethan, my friend, I truly have to thank you. You've given us two such excellent sons to take care of us in our old age as soon as we returned." Just then, the two sons came down from upstairs. Hearing the commotion, Tiffany and Scott's eyes lit up, and they cried out excitedly, voices trembling, "Children, we are your biological parents. Our family of four can finally be reunited." My twin sons cautiously took 2 steps back, then they looked at me and yelled, "Dad, these beggars must have gone crazy. Why are they calling everyone their son? Where's our security? Quickly, get these filthy beggars out of the house." With that, Noah grimaced and covered his nose, waving them away, trying to keep them from approaching. Tiffany and Scott froze, looking at Noah and Liam, saying in disbelief, "Children, we are your biological parents. Don't let Ethan, that scoundrel, deceive you. I gave birth to you, and then gave you to him to raise. I carried you for 9 months." I looked at them, their voices choked with emotion, their faces full of excitement, and couldn't help but scoff. "Tiffany, you don't actually think I am a fool, do you? How could I possibly have been cuckolded for decades? To tell you the truth, your twin sons were sent to the orphanage the very day you faked your deaths and fled abroad. Decades have passed now, and it's really hard to say if they are dead or alive." After speaking, I glanced at the household staff, gesturing for them to escort the unsavory pair out of the house. Tiffany mumbled to herself upon hearing my words, "Impossible. How could you have discovered our plan? Besides, you swore in front of Mother Eleanor that you would take good care of my children. How could you do this?" I looked at her stubbornly unrepentant expression and chuckled, saying, "Do you think everyone is like you? My mother is gone. When I eventually join her, I'll explain everything. What's the big deal about breaking a promise?" With that, I waved my hand, quickly having them escorted out. Once the house was quiet, Noah and Liam stood together by my side, grimacing and wiping the places Tiffany had touched on their bodies, saying, "Dad, you were right. Those shameless good-for-nothings really did come to our house. They should look at how much my brother and I resemble you. How could we possibly be their children? It's a joke." I nodded in agreement, then looked at them seriously, and said, "They are dreaming now. They are bound to harass you repeatedly, so don't hold back, consider it getting revenge for me." The sons nodded respectfully and murmured an assent before turning to their tasks. Watching their retreating figures, my heart felt cold. If I hadn't foreseen their plan, my twin sons would now belong to Tiffany and Scott. The thought of the sons I'd poured my heart and soul into raising for so many years, turning out to be someone else's children, I'd probably be so furious I'd spit blood. Luckily, Tiffany and Scott couldn't make it work, and came back. This way, I can finally clear my name from that past humiliation, and teach them a lesson about proper behavior. Thinking this, I immediately had someone track them. Before I devised my revenge plan, I couldn't lose sight of them, lest they pull more stunts on me. Not long after, Liam called me. He said Tiffany caused a scene at the company, telling everyone that he was their child. At the time, the company was being interviewed by a well-known media outlet, and the incident was reported in full. I clenched my phone tightly upon hearing this. It seemed their brains had gotten a bit smarter over the years. They even knew to use public opinion to force our family to return the children to them. Too bad the children are truly mine. They can't snatch them away. I reassured Liam, then told him to stay put, while I personally went to the company. When I arrived at the company, Tiffany and Scott were sitting on the floor by the company entrance, wailing uncontrollably. Curious onlookers filled the area around them, and some people were constantly holding up their phones, live streaming. Seeing the crowd, Tiffany immediately stood up, tearfully and snot-nosed, accusing me of my misdeeds. Ethan is not a human being. He conspired with his childhood sweetheart, forced me to fake my death and flee to another country. I've only just returned, but they are unjustly keeping my biological children from me. It's utterly heartless. After speaking, she looked at me from outside the crowd, a hint of triumph in her eyes. I smiled at her brilliant performance, walked straight in, and said coldly to her, "Those twins from back then were adopted by you, weren't they? Weren't you naturally infertile? How could you have given birth to children?" Back then, because I had feelings for Tiffany, I was always considerate of her feelings, and never brought up her infertility, but I never expected her to now incriminate herself by admitting she deceived me. Tiffany froze for a moment. She had long forgotten things from so many years ago. Claiming infertility back then was simply because she didn't want to have children with me, so she jutted out her neck and said to me, "You're lying. I can have children. I am not infertile at all. You're trying to slander me just so you can live happily ever after with your lover. I must have been blind." With that, she buried her face in her hands and sobbed uncontrollably. The people present, seeing her pitiful state, instinctively felt sympathy for the underdog and spoke up on her behalf. "You're dressed so respectably, yet how can you treat an innocent, helpless woman like this? Quickly, give her children back to her." Exactly. Abandoning her and her children and then keeping them from her. Aren't you afraid of being struck by lightning? I met the hostile stares around me with a cold laugh, then pulled out Tiffany's medical report. I looked at everyone and said, "Look at this. Tiffany is a master of lies and deception. First, she tricked me into raising children, and now she's tricking you fools. Do you really think I am so useless and oblivious?" With that, I handed out all the copies of the report I held to the crowd. This was the diagnosis report from a top-tier hospital here, a fake certificate Scott had begged and pleaded for ages to get someone to forge. Decades had passed, and that doctor had become a renowned chief physician here, so I looked directly at those holding up their phones, live streaming, and said, "Drive, Jenkins, your own diagnosis report from that year. Do you dare to confront me face to face now?" After speaking, I glanced at Tiffany. That idiot had incriminated herself. I really looked forward to watching them turn on each other. Scott tugged at Tiffany's clothes, signaling her to stop talking, lest she say more and make things worse. Tiffany eyed the surrounding phones warily and shut her mouth, eventually slinking away with her head down under my relentless taunts. Only then did everyone realize something was off. After all, if it were true, they could just go and argue with the doctor. Why run away? Then I looked at the people around me and said coldly, "Thank you all for your concern about this matter. I will hold a press conference later to give a full account." With that, I turned and walked out of the crowd. They had been on the run for so many years. I'd been wondering how to deal with them, and now they'd walked right into my trap. I was going to show them what I was capable of. When I returned home, The 2 children were there and immediately stood up to greet me when they saw me. Dad, they are truly outrageous. After treating you like that back then, they still dare to come back. What should we do? I calmed them down, then looked at my wife, Hannah, and said, honey, don't worry, I'll handle this properly. Hannah and I grew up as childhood sweethearts, and now we even co-parent twin sons. Our understanding goes without saying. She nodded and gently patted my shoulder, saying, go ahead and do what you need to, I'll always have your back. With that, she personally prepared lunch for the 3 of us. Watching her busy figure in the kitchen, my heart gradually filled with happiness. It was a good thing I married Hannah. If I'd ended up with someone like Tiffany, I'd be disgusted to death. After lunch, I found a hotel and invited many well-known media outlets for an interview. The affair between Tiffany, Scott, and me had long been exposed by many, so there were many attendees. Seeing that it was almost time, I directly presented numerous pieces of evidence, proving that Tiffany and Scott were the first to cheat. I even found photos of Tiffany pregnant from back then. For someone with infertility to have their own children, this was a huge joke. Everyone eagerly photographed my medical report, clamoring for the chief physician mentioned on it to respond to the matter. Soon, unable to withstand the public pressure, the hospital had no choice but to make the doctor publicly apologize, admitting she had misdiagnosed the case. To save the hospital's reputation, she was even fired. Now I had proven that Tiffany had faked her infertility. She and Scott had an affair during marriage, gave birth to 2 sons, then abandoned them to me claiming they were adopted. So I unleashed another trump card, the paperwork for sending the 2 children to the orphanage back then. When I dropped off the 2 children at the orphanage back then, to prove they weren't my abandoned children, I also had paternity tests done for each of them. The facts proved that these 2 children had no relation to me. The orphanage's former director also came forward, recalling the events of that year and confirming that I had indeed sent Tiffany's children to the orphanage. Tiffany, upon hearing this news, frantically went directly to my mansion. I opened the door and walked out, looking at her coldly, saying, what are you doing here? You're not welcome in my home. Tiffany desperately ran forward, grabbed my collar, and agonizingly asked, tell me, where did you send my children? I chuckled, looking at her, then impatiently pushed her hand away, saying sternly, I already told you I sent your children to the orphanage. What do I care if they are dead or alive? Tiffany, if you hadn't been so greedy, how would your children have fallen to this state? Looking at the woman before me, not a ripple of emotion stirred in my heart. If she had just told the truth back then, I wouldn't have endlessly hounded her, and we might even have had a dignified divorce, with me giving her a sum of money. It's just that Tiffany wanted too much, squandering all her wealth and comfort. Tiffany powerlessly released my hand, stumbled back 2 steps, and plopped down on the ground. A flicker of confusion crossed her eyes, and she said painfully, it was my fault. I shouldn't have given you the children. I thought your vow in front of your mother would allow me to rest easy. It's all my fault. With that, she covered her face and sobbed uncontrollably. Seeing her in that state, I slowly walked over, knelt down, and said, think about who instigated you back then. Every crime has a culprit. Go find your children. With that, I watched Tiffany stand up and stumble away. I secretly followed her, watching her go straight to the orphanage, but the records from 18 years ago were long gone. Tiffany unwillingly knelt on the ground, pleading with the staff to try and find more information. Soon, someone looking at my photo on their phone finally remembered the twins. She looked at Tiffany, hesitated, and said, I remember now, Ethan even had paternity tests done back then. The whole thing was a big mess. After it was confirmed they weren't his children, we took in the twins. But not long after, they passed away due to pneumonia. Their remains were buried in the children's memorial plot. The children's memorial plot was filled with the remains of homeless children. With the kind person's recollection, Tiffany found her twin children. By then, the children's bodies had decomposed into bones. She performed a DNA test, confirming they were her children. Tiffany was inconsolably grief-stricken, bitterly regretting how she had given up her wealth and comfort for such a scoundrel. But it was too late. Scott disappeared on the day I confronted them. When he heard that my children were Hannah's and mine, he saw he couldn't get any benefits and simply ran off. All of Tiffany's cash had been run off with by Scott. She didn't even have money for the children's burial expenses. So she came to my house again, humbling herself to beg for burial expenses. I chuckled, looking at her pitiful state, then pulled out $50,000 in cash and placed it in front of her, saying, As long as you do as I say, all this money is yours. Tiffany looked at the $50,000 before her, nodded without a second thought, and said, "Tell me what to do, I'll do anything." I looked at her with a half smile, and whispered my plan into her ear. Soon, Tiffany walked out of my mansion with my money. As soon as she was out, she started contacting Scott, telling him that she and I had rekindled our relationship, and that I was now keeping her at the Hillside Manor. Then she patiently waited in the villa for Scott to take the bait. 3 days later, Scott finally appeared, on a dark, quiet night. He sneaked into the Hillside Manor. Tiffany smiled and welcomed him in, even asking the housekeeper to make him a bowl of noodles. Scott hadn't expected Tiffany to be living such a luxurious life now, so he excitedly grabbed Tiffany's hand and said, "Tiffany, I left the other day to go look for our children." Tiffany looked at him with a half smile, paused slightly, and said, "Oh really? Did you find our children? Where did you go to look for them?" Scott's eyes darted around nervously, and finally he shook his head, saying, "Not yet, but if you give me money, I can definitely bring the children back. Just give me the money, and I'll go look right now." With that, he impatiently fumbled for Tiffany's bag. Tiffany saw his eagerness and simply handed him $10,000. Scott left after getting the money. He hadn't actually gone anywhere. There was an underground casino nearby, and had been squandering his days there. Now he had lost everything, and it just so happened he came back to Tiffany for money. The moment he got the money, he returned to the casino to continue gambling. $10,000 didn't even make a dent there. He lost it all after just a few hands. Then the casino's enforcers beat him up, and viciously threw him out. Scott glared at the enforcer defiantly and cursed, "Don't you dare look down on me. I have plenty of money. I am going back for it now." With that, he got up from the ground, and walked out of the casino. The more Scott thought about it, the more unwilling he became, so he returned to the Hillside Manor, found Tiffany, and forced her to give him money. Tiffany only had the $50,000 I gave her. Most of that money had already been spent on her children, leaving very little. Her pockets were emptier than her face was clean now. How could she possibly give him any money? Tiffany screamed repeatedly, "Scott, let go of me. I don't have any money. Let go, or I am calling the police." Scott was seeing red from losing. He looked at the struggling woman before him, then viciously slapped her, saying, "Bullshit. You and Ethan have taken a liking to each other. The money he's let slip is more than enough for me. Quickly, give me the money." Tiffany immediately began to explain upon hearing his words. "No. He gave me $50,000 to lure you out. I don't have any money." Scott scoffed after hearing her words. "You conniving little bitch, still trying to trick me. If you hadn't reconciled with Ethan, how could you be living in this big mansion?" With that, he looked up and around the villa, his eyes filled with covetousness. Then he pounced on Tiffany, brutally vented his frustrations, and grinned savagely, saying, "You've already slept with Ethan, haven't you? But I don't mind you. He'll have my fun first." With that, he stood up and walked to the cabinet, saw the exquisite vase on it, and simply put it in a bag and took it away. Watching on my phone's surveillance, I saw him choose my most valuable auction item. I chuckled, saying, "Scott, your end is near." Then I pressed the emergency number. "Officer, someone stole a valuable vase from my mansion. That vase was auctioned from France 18 years ago, and cost me $1.3 million. Upon hearing such a large sum of money was involved, the police immediately rushed to the Hillside Manor. Under my surveillance footage, they easily located Scott. With my tip, they went to the casino and arrested him, bringing him back. After Scott was brought into the police station, he kept shouting and yelling, "Quickly, release me. Don't stop me from making my money, or I'll kill you all." The police watched him spouting nonsense, immediately cuffed him and told him to shut up, then detained him in the interrogation room. An hour later, they walked in, pulled out a photo of my collectible, and coldly asked Scott, "Scott, did you steal this person's valuable? This vase is worth $1.3 million. The owner has provided the receipts and appraisal documents." Scott looked at the police and immediately knew he had been set up. He desperately shook his head, denying it, continuously yelling, "It wasn't me. Ethan framed me because he doesn't like me." The police wouldn't listen to his excuses, and then pulled out Tiffany's photo, saying, "You are suspected of assault. The surveillance cameras recorded all your actions. Do you plead guilty?" Scott looked at the surveillance footage, and finally lowered his head, unable to say a word. soon. With irrefutable evidence, he pleaded guilty. In the end, Scott was sentenced to 30 years in prison for multiple charges. I personally visited him in prison once. When Scott saw me, he scoffed, saying, "So I was the fish that took the bait, and Tiffany, that idiot, was your bait?" I nodded and said, "Well, you were a fish willing to take the bait, weren't you? You two conspired to cuckold me, and now that you've fallen to this state, you're not innocent at all. Scott, scum like you deserve to lose your freedom forever here." With that, I turned and walked out of the prison. Only when I saw the blue sky and white clouds did I feel alive again. That cuckolding incident from back then festered in my heart, becoming an indelible scar for life. But now it's better. I've personally dealt with one of them. Now there's one more to deal with. I drove straight to the hillside manor. Tiffany saw me enter and lunged at me, saying, "Ethan, he's so cruel. You actually let Scott assault me. You monster." I impatiently pushed her away, saying, "What are you talking about? I kindly let you stay in my big mansion, and you, instead, conspired with someone else to steal my vase. I haven't even settled the score with you." With that, I waved my hand, and the household staff in the mansion threw all of Tiffany's belongings out. Tiffany looked at me in shock, trying to speak, but I coldly cut her off. "From now on, we're even. Get out of my mansion." With that, I watched her being kicked out of the house. Tiffany now had no money, and she was kicked out of my house. A miserable life awaited her. However, this was her own choice. It was her destiny. I had the housekeeper thoroughly clean the mansion from top to bottom, then returned home. Hannah saw me return, took the freshly made soup from the kitchen, and said with a smile, "It back. Did everything go smoothly?" I walked over, gently wrapped my arms around her from behind, rested my head on her shoulder, and said earnestly, "Honey, thank you. Thank you for giving me a chance, for allowing me to have such a complete family. If she hadn't agreed to marry me back then, I wouldn't even have had the courage to face the reality of my wife running off with another man." Hannah smiled, turned, and embraced me, saying, "Silly. I am the one who should thank you for shielding me from harm and protecting me all these years. The soup is ready, come and drink it while it's hot." I nodded and sat at the dining table, spooning the soup. The door suddenly opened, and the two children returned, smelling the delicious scent in the air. They yelled, "Mom, soup." Watching my family's happy and harmonious scene, my eyes welled up. This, I realized, was the meaning of home.